All right, my fellow commandos and my commando wannabes, it's time I come clean. There were some questionable, nay, I dare say, some cards I was wrong about in Everfest. Now, yes, I know. This may come as a shock to you, for of course, no one on the interwebs has ever called into question my judgment. That said, it's time to right this here horrible wrong. So in today's video, I'm covering my top bad calls and dismissals that I made in my initial takes from Everfest. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Andrew here as always. Thanks very much for checking in. And yeah, I was laying on the sarcasm pretty thick there. If anybody of you actually took it serious, let's be honest, this probably is the place for you. But realistically, what I wanted to do tonight is, it's been a month plus now since the Everfest release. Honestly, it feels a little longer than that, right? But that's card gaming and cycles and how things come at us fast. But anyways, it's been a bit since Everfest release, and especially since spoiler season. We go through spoiler season, we take first takes, and we go through the document on release, and we do first takes, and then sometimes in the back of our head, we just drop things that we didn't deem as important. So an exercise I like to do after so long in a meta is go back and look at everything as much as I can from a fresh perspective, and I like to, and obviously that's what we're doing tonight, I like to take the opportunity to basically say, what did I get wrong? What did I really miss? And then try to kind of learn from what I missed and see if I can actually learn anything from that and make me a better player, right? So it's certainly kind of a thought exercise in itself, but I also thought it might be fun to go through in retrospect what I think I got wrong the first time around, right? I think there's value in that. So I want to remind everybody that we are sponsored by our friends over at FabDB. Obviously, they are the best resource that we all have for Flesh and Blood on the interwebs. You can go over there, you can build your decks. I built at least 3 decks on there just today myself, just playing around with stuff that I wanted to put into Felt Table this week and get some reps on. It's such a great tool for us all to use. I mean, between the collection management, the deck building is the biggest thing, but it's also deck sharing. You can even go get prices and stuff out there. And if you go and upgrade your account, you unlock a whole bunch of other features that are available to you. It's just a fantastic resource. I cannot stress enough how important it is for us as Flesh and Blood players. So go check them out. And again, thank you to our friends over at FabDB for sponsoring what we do here. All right, so tonight, that's right, we're doing a list. So I figured it might be fun to do, the PTI style countdown, because that always gets good feedback from a select number of people. So let's do it, folks. Now, before we actually get into the list itself, there's one honorable mention I wanted to give. And the reason this is an honorable mention is because I don't think I was wrong, because it certainly needed checked out and evaluated, right? But I wanted to talk a bit about Death Boar. Dreadboar. Damn it. I still get that screwed up, right? It's at this point, it's kind of like a running joke on the channel, right? But no, so Dreadboar, when it came out, I think many of us, myself included, were like, that's the Lord and Savior of Ranger. And, I think in the end, it's really good. I'm not saying that it's not good, but I think it's pretty clear at this point that it was not, the savior of Azalea. It wasn't, right? Lexi still wants to play Voltaire, and many Lexis are still playing Death Dealer, right? So, the ability on it's really good. Being able to give +1 when you put an arrow on is really, really, really good for Boltyn shot. I'm certainly not taking anything away from it. I'm not saying it was a bad call, because it certainly needed checked out and explored, but I don't think it was I don't think that it's necessarily, how do I say this? I don't think it's necessarily the I already said it. That's what I'll go with. I don't think it was the savior for Ranger, right? Which is, I think it's been backed up with data, right? So I think that's fairly clear. right, so my number one top bad call, and the reason I actually have this first is because I actually think this one's a kinda, so it's not actually my number one bad call, it's just the one I wanted to start with. And to be clear, most of these aren't actually in order of like the worst, because I mean, who wants to go through and read that, right? But the one I want to start first is a kinda, and that is Shatter. So I poo-pooed on this card really hard. I think I actually called it absolute garbage and all this stuff and completely unplayable. And that's a false statement. This card is not completely unplayable because I kind of eschewed Raiden, what I was thinking. Right? I mean, you guys know I'm a Dorinthea player. I like to play Dorinthea Dawnblade. And this card's really, really, really bad for Dawnblade because you don't want to give up. You don't want to trade doing hits. Like, right? That's what you're doing here is you're trading your hit damage to blow up an equipment, which certainly could be good in the right circumstance. But a lot of people had piped up, by a lot of viewers who are very, very good Warrior players, had piped up over time and basically pointed out that, even the threat of having it in your sideboard makes them make different decisions, which is a valid point. And then you add into the fact that, I think it probably is because it's also yellow pitch. So I think it actually is a pretty reasonable include for Raiden decks. And I had kind of overlooked that just with my own kind of, Dorinthea Dawnblade goggles. So I think I was 20% wrong with this one. So it's not complete and utter garbage. It is a very niche card. I think that's a fair way to say this. All right, so the one I wanted to put at the top is one that I did poo-poo on this. Like I verbally poo-pooed on this in a couple situations. I mean, I grouped this in with Timidity Shot. I think it was Timidity Point. I grouped it in with this, and I basically wasn't, on my first pass, I wasn't impressed with both of the new arrows in this set. All right, aside from Battering Bolt. Not that I'm super impressed with Battering Bolt, but it's its own thing, right? So both the one-drop arrows in this set I wasn't super impressed with, but Fatigue Shot, I think I just read and said, meh, they'll just... So the reason, in my head, the logic in my head on Fatigue Shot was that if I threw this out, they'd just swing their weapon, right? Because they'd block it, and then they'd just swing their weapon, or would do whatever they could, right? That said, we're in a different meta than I think my headspace was in at the time, right? And sure, I mean, Bravo coming, what we're seeing is a lot of big attacks, right? Whether it be Prism, whether it be Bravo, and I'm not talking about Prism's auras, right? But we're talking about the Heralds or a Crippling Crush or whatever. In my head, it was, well, this isn't going to be great because you're just going to only, it's only going to net you 2 or 3 attack. And I'm not really sure why that didn't trigger at the time that, like, it's probably going to net you 2 or 3 attack minimum, right? So, I'll fall on my sword, I'll fall on my arrow. See what I did there? I'll fall on my arrow on this one. I missed this, right? So people had pointed out, and I was like, I don't really agree. And it just took me a while to get there, folks. I'm sorry. Fatigue Shot's a good arrow. It is. It's definitely, I think, a sideboard arrow for those matchups, especially considering the meta that we have, right? So, yep, I'll take that one. Right, next, and I talked about this in a bit with the video with Billy, but Ride the Tailwind. When you look at this card in of itself from a CC Ninja standpoint, I still think I was right there, and I think those are kind of the blinders I had on as I was really thinking like CC Ninja, what it'll end up doing, maybe even like an Ira. But this card is frickin' nominal. That's a word, right? Yeah, it totally is. This card's phenomenal in Benji, right? This enables gross things to happen in Benji, and that's why I have the blue and the yellow here. I really missed this card. I read it and I was like, oh, well, that's everything's got combo, meh. I just missed it. I don't know a better way to say it than that. I missed it. Ride the Tailwind is super strong for Benji. There's arguments to be playing it for in other decks as well. The thing is, in other decks, they're not going to let it hit because the stacked fallout of this is insane, and that's kind of why I dismissed it. But when it's Benji and they can't do anything about it, or they have to burn armor that then you can back up with Spring Tidings, you start to see how the pieces fall down. This card's insanely good, right? And I missed it. I missed it. All right, next in that vein, right, and like I said, this isn't necessarily top down of worst misses to best misses, but in that vein, I missed Break Tide, right? So when I read Break Tide, I was like, well, the problem with the Torrent Tempo line is that if Torrent Tempo doesn't hit, because I mean you guys all played Ira or at least played against her, right? You would Kadachi, Torrent Tempo. If they blocked it somehow, you'd try to break Scales or an Ancestral over, try to get a hit and then do your thing, right? But we all knew what happened if we were able to block out Torrent Tempo, you dead stop them. So when I read this, I was like, oh, it's Torrent Tempo line. This card's pretty good, but I don't think it's realistic. But then you apply it to Benji, where you can start your combos mid-line because of the boots, and this card becomes really good as a finisher because even though it's above the Benji limit, it has Dominate, so you're still going to sling on average 1 to 2 through, which is what Benji's doing anyway. So and it has combo again because if you've got the boots out, this would come out with go again. So this is on me. I missed this one. This is really good with Benji. I mean, it can arguably good with others as well. I think it's a little harder to do because generally you want to do Torrent Tempo. But if you don't care about Torrent Tempo, like I said, in the boots line, this card ends up being pretty freaking good. And I absolutely blew it off when I first read it. All right, next. This one's totally on me. So the backstory here is that, I mean, I in retrospect, I believe I know what happened in my head, was that I saw this was an aura, and I was just like, meh, right? But, like, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, because this card is freaking bonkers good, right? So Runeblade Invocation, you throw it out there. I mean, what doesn't this card do that you want it to do, right? So you throw it out there, and you just created an aura. That might be good for some stuff in this set, right? Now, every turn, it's going to poop out an aura for the next 3 turns, I should say. It's going to poop out an aura. That's also pretty good for what you're trying to do with a lot of stuff in this set. And it's a non-attack with Go Again. That's pretty good, I've heard, for this little weapon called Rosetta Thorn. Like, I don't know. It was just something happened in my head where I read this and I was like, and it just got put in the garbage slot. And like, oh my God. Honestly, this one's like probably my biggest miss of the set. Like, let's be honest. This card's crazy good, and I just kind of like blew it off. And like, I don't really know what I was thinking. But you know what, folks? It happens, right? We get in a mindset when we're going through things. You're rushing through to read the set, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm obviously here falling on my rune chance at this point, right? But man, I missed it, and this was a great card. I mean, this card, you play with everybody, I think, right? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to work it into my Briar deck even, which doesn't necessarily make sense with the 2s and well, it makes sense with... No, it doesn't even make sense with the 2s. You want to follow up on the 2 for the Rosetta Swing, but I mean, the value on this card is... Like, if you look at this card, honestly, this card pretty broken. Like, I mean, maybe not broken in the, like, true sense of how people take that word, but, like, this card's way above curve. Let's say that. This card's way above curve. All right, and then to that end, so I was super high on, I always say it wrong, Shrill of Skullform. That's the card I was very excited about. But there's this whole line in this set, right, of if you've pooped out an aura or created an aura or what, yeah, pooped out an aura. If you pooped out an aura, we do things, right? If you pooped out an aura, Runeblade go burr, right? That's the line the kids are saying these days, right? And the one I focused in on because of just the +3, because I'm a simple man, let's be honest, was Shrill of Skullform, or Shrill of Skullform. I think that's it. Shrill of Skullform. Whatever. You know what I mean. But Drowning Dire and Reek are realistically, I mean, don't get me wrong, Shrill is really good. Like, I wasn't wrong on that. But dismissing these two because they weren't as good, or because they didn't do the same thing as Shrill, because they didn't have the attack bonus as Shrill, the on-hit effects of these have really been, I believe, changing the meta, not to mention the fact that you're trying to go for discard and on-hit effects. Both of these are really strong. And it's not that I necessarily said, it's not that I said these were bad cards, it's just that I kind of dismissed them in favor of Shrill. And like Reek's, I mean, look at it, like the card looks bad, like it's a 2 for 4. Like that looks bad, but like the card's good. Right. And I mean, I just missed it. Right. So I think it's something that you should go back and think. I mean, I've seen it in a lot of Earth Briars. I've seen it in some other builds. Drowning Dire, obviously, is up there. I mean, it does good things, but man, Reek. Like, look at that card. It doesn't look like it should be good when you first look at it. You're like, a 2 for 4. But no, the card's good, right? And you can pummel the baby if you want to. I don't think many people do, but still. All right, next is Payload. So it's not that I necessarily dismissed Payload as much, but when I was doing you guys know I had the video out on the new Blitz dash boosty boost using the new one that gives +2. I forget what it's called. Of course I do when I'm shooting. I forget what it's called. But the new item, god damn it. But Payload, I eschewed this, and I don't know why. Like, it's a 2 for 6, and it's got Dominate if you do what you wanted to do anyway. Like, this card's really good, and I don't know why. I think I was just so focused in on T-Bone and some of the other stuff, like the new items that like can actually mess up, like Prism and Rune Chance and all that. I think that's what happened here. But Payload, man, Techlo Pounder, thank you, God, I finally remembered it. Jesus, sorry guys. So sorry guys. I'd go back and do editing, except this whole video is about falling on my sword. So you know what? Cheers. But man, yeah, Payload fits right into that because it's good. Like it definitely needs to fit into that deck. So I just missed it. It's not necessarily that I thought Payload was bad when I read it. I just didn't flag as being better than other stuff that already existed. And when you get in that headspace and you start writing things down or clicking things, whatever suit floats your boat, and I missed it. All right, number 8, the last one. You can also tell I probably went top down on the Everfest page for this one, but Fire Breathing. So to be fair, I said this card was good-ish, but I undermined it saying, wouldn't you rather play Exude? And I still hold that kind of, but I've seen Fire Breathing do some pretty gross things in the last couple of weeks. Particularly shout out to Adam. I saw him do some pretty gross things with the Cav Dane deck, right? So that's where it fits, which, yes, I grant you, that's also where Exude Confidence fits. Like, I've seen plenty of Valda decks. My own Valda deck I play Exude Confidence in because, like, blue for more, right? But Fire Breathing kind of fits that same thing. The difference is you can pummel Fire Breathing, and I know that sounds like combo wombo-y, and you guys know me, I'm not super huge on combo wombo, but it actually is a thing. And then you can throw the extra resources in it for just like a couple, and like that's all good, and that's great. Not all good. That's like freaking fantastic. But the other thing on Fire Breathing is like you lay down a 2, and they like block out. I mean, maybe they hold a card. But people way overblock because they don't want to get hit hard. And like, point is, I didn't give Fire Breathing enough credit. Do I think Exude, like in a complete and utter vacuum, do I think Exude Confidence is better? Yes, I do. But I think I threw Fire Breathing to the side too quickly in that point. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I'm here talking. Hopefully it makes sense. So anyway, that is actually my list. So those are, the question here is, what did I learn from this? I mean, hopefully when I was going through this, I adequately explained, there's value to going back and learning why you made a mistake or why you made the wrong call. Whether it was just you were, dumbfounded, too quick to scroll through, or whether you actually had a wrong take, or whether it's just how the meta's evolved, whatever it may be. I think there's value in going back and looking at something and being like, hey, this is why I was wrong. This is why this fits. This is why this works. The big ones on here, if I go back and I look, like Fatigue Shot, I think that was a big miss on my part, right? I was too focused on how I would play against it, but that's based on what I like to play and how I like to play, and not necessarily on how the game is, right? So I think Fatigue Shot was a big miss on my part. I also think the Ride the Tailwind Break Tide thing is also a big miss, but in a certain situation, which I just wasn't considering. But the learning from that is to make sure to consider all formats and all heroes, which, duh, Andrew, right? I get it. And then Runeblade Incantation, I'm writing that one off. I don't know where my head was there. Like, I read that, I think my issue was, in retrospect, I think my issue was I was so focused on the Guardian portion of this set, and Guardian has so many auras, and a lot of them I haven't been overall impressed with, right, in terms of what they do. And I think when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's an aura. And maybe it was actually, to be fair to myself, maybe it was because there's so many items in this set, and like I was just I'm so down on so many of the items. Yes, there's some combo wombo things, I get it. Like, I'm pretty down on the majority, overall, on the average item, I'm pretty down on it. And I think in my head, maybe I saw the aura and I was just like, it's just one more thing that goes into the arena. Yeah, I'm just making excuses to myself here because I just flat out missed. I don't really have an excuse. I just flat out missed it. That card's phenomenally insane. Insanely good, right? And then, the other two are definitely situational type uses, but, there's a good learning from payload especially, because I was like, oh, well, that's, I already have a card for that. Well, payload's better, right? So anyway, that'll do me for tonight. I think that's enough, and hopefully you enjoyed tonight's cast. Basically, me going back, and because I do think there's value in us going back and looking what we did wrong, right? And that's what I wanted to do tonight, was kind of share that and maybe spark your thoughts of what were the wrong takes you had. Again, you're the internet, you're never wrong. I get it, but again, sarcasm meter, right? But I do think there's value in going back and reevaluating what we didn't get right the first time, and then trying to figure out why we didn't get right the first time, and trying to get learning from that. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, that's why I thought this was actually worth the cast. So anyway, if you agree, let me know. If you disagree and you think I'm an idiot, you probably already let me know already. Love you guys. So anyway, all jokes aside, I do love you guys. Thank you for continuing to tune in. This is great stuff. So I want to remind everybody that, we are playing every Saturday night at Gonga Games. Come join us. We just got we finally got the February Armory kit in because, it's March now. Love you, distributors. Love you. Whatever. I don't work there. I just do what I can. But we did get the March kit in as well, so we're really good for the next 2 months. So cheers. Come join us and play. Also, Travis over at Fab Foundry, he just ran an amazing event, one of the largest in Oregon, for the pro qualifier. They had some great stuff out there. Somebody from Canada came in and won it. Of course they did. So we'll have to go back and win one. But again, if you're going to get any singles, go check him out. Use the link below, and I get a small kickback from that. And it's much appreciated to help me get my stuff, like my Tekla Pounder that I've been trying to track down. So anyway, folks, thank you very much for tuning in, for dealing with all of my BS, all of my wrong calls. And if nothing else, folks, go Commando.